Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to yet another reaction video. This time I'm watching the Santa Fe 210-2s. I said ta-ta. Sorry, that was a fail there. But anyway, I'm watching the Santa Fe 210-2s when fusing locomotives into one fails miserably. From Andrew Raila Bammers. I have not been watching his Dead on Arrival series in probably about a year at this point, so I'm long overdue in getting back into it, but here we are now. So yeah, I come back eventually, but all right, let's get started. I hope we can 3000 class 210-2.
In this episode of Dead on Arrival, we're going to venture into the United States where I'm from and live in. Leading up to when I began to write the script, I put up a poll to see which of the 5 American locomotives on it you wanted to see me do next. And
hey, don't worry, we've all had typos here and there. Also, I know that the S1 video was remade, so I cannot wait to get to that one eventually. I don't know a lot about the Amtrak HHP8s, but I will say that those things were probably way too overpowered for their own good. Like, doesn't 8,000 HP just seem overkill for a passenger locomotive? Because that thing had real bad wheel slip issues.
And the ATSF 210-2s got the highest vote, so this is what this episode will be discussing. In the 1910s, articulated steam locomotives were making a massive impact on American railroads as a result of their massive size and power, while remaining flexible enough to negotiate curves properly. They were also more powerful and more flexible compared to locomotives with 10 or 12 driving wheels. In 1910, the Santa Fe Railroad took an unusual approach to using articulated steam locomotives by building their first from a pair of 262 Prairies into a 2662 or Prairie Mallet with a joint.
Oh, interesting. And were specific configurations like this had the plow that far apart from the wheelbase? I don't know. That just kind of sticks out to me. Sorry.
In 1910, the Santa Fe Railroad took an unusual approach to using articulated steam locomotives by building their first from a pair of 262 Prairies into a 2662 or Prairie Mallet with a jointed boiler. The design turned out to be okay, and the railroad would order 51 more of this design from 1910 to 1911, with some working out and some not.
Jointed boilers,
In 1911, the Santa Fe took their way of making articulateds to the next level when they decided to rebuild some of their existing 210-2s into 210-2 Santa Fe type Mallets.
Oh, okay. The 900 and 1600 classes were the only pre-existing Santa Fe 210-2s, ATSF Santa Fe FE types at the time. Gotcha.
The result was the 3000 class, of which 10 were built from 1911 to 1912 and numbered 3000 to 3009.
Well.
Each locomotive was a pair of 210-2s cobbled or fused together into a single 210-2 locomotive. At 122 feet long, they were the largest locomotives ever built until 1914, and for the early 1910s, they were really powerful with a tractive effort of 111,600 pounds.
Now, I don't know tractive effort when it comes to steam locomotives, but that sure sounds pretty powerful. And these things do have the size to back it up.
210-2 locomotive. At 122 feet long, they were the largest locomotives ever built until 1914, and for the early 1910s, they were really powerful with a tractive effort of 111,600 pounds, or 496 kilonewtons. Other specs included 1,600 pounds, or 496 kilonewtons.
A lot of 2882s of even the late 1910s couldn't outmatch that. That's impressive, I believe.
Other specs included a combined weight of 441 tons, a boiler pressure of 225 psi, the low-pressure cylinders with a bore by stroke of 38 by 32 inches, and high-pressure cylinders that were 28 by 32 inches. So, what could go wrong with this class? Well, similar to the Great Baron AA-20, It was the performance and design of the ATSF 210-10-2s that sealed their fate. Well, it was the performance.
And yeah, I didn't know about that. I did already know about this. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, or ATSF for short. Also, doesn't like the boiler of this thing seem too small for its size? I suppose that had to have played a factor.
Cylinders that were 28 by 32 inches. So, what could go wrong with this class? Well, similar to the Great Baron AA-20, it was the performance and design of the ATSF 210-10-2s that sealed their fate. While they were good in helper service, they could only reach speeds of 10 to 15 miles per hour before losing steam in any situation. So they were really freaking slow, which is especially a problem in the western region of the US where the Santa Fe was located because the west is huge and filled with mountains or otherwise massive empty plains.
Yeah, and I know the east would not be very kind to those things.
At least they weren't as slow as the E2s on passenger trains. The reason for the poor steaming was that the 377 fire tubes were relatively short. Ahead of the front tube sheet, a 91-inch long combustion chamber contained the feed water heater, which was stuffed with 500 2¼ inch diameter tubes that aggregated 2,637 square feet. A single 6-inch diameter tube was located at the center of the bundle and ended at the beginning of a 32-inch long combustion chamber, which connected the front of the feed water heater and the low-temperature, low-pressure superheater. This connector needed suitable expansion flanges to accommodate the initial steam pipes and high-pressure exhaust pipes. In case any of that didn't make sense, then look at the boiler. Yeah. See how elongated it looks? I couldn't find the information on how big the boiler was in diameter, but it's evident that it was too small in diameter for its length. Not like on other articulated steam locomotives, which had very wide diameter boilers so that they could hold enough water to produce enough steam.
Yeah, big boy for the win, all right. Yeah, as even I speculated or guessed, the overall boiler design seems too small for something like this.
It looks. I couldn't find the information on how big the boiler was in diameter, but it's evident that it was too small in diameter for its length. Not like on other articulated steam locomotives, which had very wide diameter boilers so that they could hold enough water to produce enough steam out of to keep the pressure up so that they could steam properly. But that wasn't the case with the ATSF Santa Fe Malays, so like the AA-20, their boilers weren't big enough for them. Except for the ATSF 210-10-2s, it was because of the low diameter instead of the poor quality coal, though I do think the AA-20 should have had a wider boiler too. Seeing that they weren't very successful, the 3000s, just like the Pennsylvania S1 and Q1 decades later, didn't last very long. From 1915 to 1918, the Santa Fe cut up all of them into two separate 210-2s each. The rear sections were rebuilt into the 3010 class, and the front sections into the 3020 class, with the 3010s numbered 3010 to 3019, and 3020s numbered 3020 to 3029. Both were identical in almost every specification, with the remaining few not having much of a difference. And finally, for the tenders, the 3010s retained the tenders of the 3000s, while the 3020s were given new and more traditional Santa Fe tenders.
Oh, so those were called turtleback. Not turdback. Turtleback tenders. Like, I'm just now learning that too. Also, did any of these survive into preservation? I would hope so. Obviously not in their 210-10 form. 210-10-2 form. I'm saying everything wrong all of a sudden.
The Santa Fe ultimately never bought articulated steam locomotives again, and would also never end up dethroning the 3000s as their most powerful steam locomotives ever built. The 3000s remained the longest Santa Fe locomotives ever built until 1944, when they were dethroned by the 5011 class, which were a foot longer, but were only the second strongest ATSF locomotives ever built. The 3010 and 3020 class locomotives continued their service with the Santa Fe until they were decommissioned in favor of diesels from 1945 to 1953, and were all cut up by the latter year.
That's unfortunate. But I'm glad that once they were rebuilt into regular steamers, they were actually quite successful. and lasted a pretty long time. It's also kind of a shame that Santa Fe never tried articulated steam locomotives ever again after the two 1010-2s. Would have been interesting to see what else they would have tried out.
Of the remaining Santa Fe 210-2s, one still survives today. The sole survivor in question is number 940 of the railroad's first class of 210-2s, the 900s. 940 was withdrawn in
It was built in 1903. That's pretty old.
Class of 210-2s, the 900s. 940 was withdrawn in 1954 and is now on display at the Union Depot on 2nd Avenue in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
That's great.
All in all, I will allow the 3010s and 3020s on extinct locomotives or favorites lists, and wouldn't mind building any out of Lego, but not the 3000s because they sucked. Granted, they were still better than other crappy locomotives like the AA-20, E2s, and Pennsylvania Q1 to name a few, but had their boilers been bigger in diameter, more conventional designs, and built fresh instead of from existing smaller ones, they could have proved to be much more better and successful locomotives just like the Virginian AEs in the years to follow, and I would have liked them much better. The 3000s taught a valuable history lesson in articulated steam locomotive design of what can happen if your boiler isn't well designed enough nor big enough in diameter. In the following years until the end of the steam age, locomotive designers in America were quick to never repeat that mistake, nor the ATSF 2-10-10-2 design ever again.
And the two 10-10-2s basically boiled down to one of those failed locomotives that work obviously way better and greater in model form instead of their real life counterparts. Like there's probably countless of those. But yeah, that's that.
If you enjoyed the video and learned something new,
I did enjoy it, and I did learn a fair bit here. But that is going to do it for the reaction, everybody. Let me know what you think down below. I will have the video linked down below as always. Take care, y'all, and I'll see y'all next time.